All right, let's get our hands dirty with something that's the bedrock of every great project, every groundbreaking discovery, and every decision that actually works: data. But not just any data. We're talking about good data. Think about it like this. You're in your workshop, ready to build the most epic go-kart ever. You have your blueprints, your tools are all laid out, and you have a pile of materials. But what if those materials are junk? What if the wood is rotten, the screws are rusted shut, and the wheels are different sizes? Your epic go-kart is doomed from the start. That, my friends, is exactly what bad data does to a project. It's the spoiled ingredient in your recipe, the cracked foundation for your skyscraper. Data quality isn't some boring, abstract concept. It's the difference between success and a spectacular failure. So, what exactly do we mean by data quality? In its simplest form, it means your data is fit for its purpose. It's accurate, complete, consistent, and reliable. Imagine you're a chef in a 5-star restaurant. You wouldn't just accept any crate of tomatoes that shows up at your kitchen door, right? You'd check them. Are they ripe? Are they bruised? Are any of them actually potatoes that got mixed in by mistake? Our first line of defense is the front door of our data pipeline. This is where the data first tries to get in, and it's our best chance to stop troublemakers right at the source. We call this data validation at ingress, which is just a fancy way of saying we're checking the data's ID before we let it into the party. Let's use a real-world workshop example. Say you're building a bunch of identical birdhouses, and you've ordered pre-cut wood pieces. The first thing you do when the delivery arrives is check the manifest and inspect the pieces. You'd check if you got the right number of walls, roofs, and bases. Are the walls supposed to be 6 inches tall? Let's get out the tape measure and confirm. Is the wood supposed to be 1/2 inch thick pine? Let's check. If you find a piece that's 8 inches tall or made of oak, you set it aside immediately. You don't just toss it into the main pile to be discovered later, causing chaos on your assembly line. In the data world, this means setting up rules, or schemas. These schemas are our blueprints. A schema for customer data might say, the customer ID must be a unique number, the email must be in a valid email format, the join date must be a real date and not in the future, and the country code must be one of the official 2-letter codes like US or CA. When new data comes in, our pipeline automatically checks it against these rules. If a record shows up with an email like not an email or a join date of December 31st, 2099, the system flags it right away. This initial validation is the most efficient way to maintain data quality. Why? Because you're catching the problem at its cheapest point. Once data has passed our initial inspection at the front door, it's time for the next stage, a deeper investigation. This is where we go from being a bouncer to being a detective. We call this data profiling. Think of it as creating a detailed dossier on your data. Imagine you're putting together a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle of a blue sky. At first, you just check to make sure you have all 1,000 pieces. That's our initial validation. But data profiling is like spreading all the pieces out on the table and studying them. You start to notice patterns. You see that most pieces are some shade of blue. You find all the straight-edged border pieces. You get a feel for the subtle gradients and shapes. Now, imagine that while sorting, you find a bright red piece. It's a valid puzzle piece. It's not broken, but it's completely out of place. It doesn't fit the profile of your blue sky puzzle. In our data pipeline, profiling works by running statistical analyses on our data sets. Our tools can automatically calculate things like the minimum, maximum, mean, and standard deviation for every numerical column. For text columns, they can count the frequency of each value. For dates, they can plot a timeline. For example, in a data set of customer orders, profiling might tell us that the order total is typically between $10 and $200. So if a new order comes in for $50,000, our profiling tools will immediately flag it as an outlier. It might be a legitimate whale of a customer, or it might be a typo for $500. So our detective work in the profiling stage has paid off. We've found the anomalies, the outliers, and the missing pieces. Now it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to the hands-on part, the cleanup. This is the workshop session where we take our flawed materials and fix them. Let's use a simpler analogy, correcting a typo in your homework before you hand it in. You write a brilliant essay, but you run a spell check and find you've written te instead of the a dozen times. You also notice you've used both USA and United States to refer to the same country. Cleaning this up is straightforward. You run a find and replace for the typo. Then, you decide on a standard format, say USA, and apply it everywhere for consistency. You might even add more detail, like changing New York to New York, USA to make it more specific. This is exactly what data cleansing does. It fixes obvious errors, standardizes formats, and sometimes adds information to make the data better. In our data pipeline, this process is often automated with a set of rules. For missing data, we have a few options. If a customer's age is missing, we could fill it in with the average age of all customers, a technique called imputation. For inconsistent formats, we create transformation rules. For example, we can have a rule that converts all state names to their two-letter abbreviations, like California becomes CA. We can correct data entry errors, like a negative value in a quantity underscore ordered field, by changing it to its positive equivalent based on a logical rule. The key is to document every single change you make. We've done it. We've built a pipeline that validates, profiles, and cleans our data. Our data is now sparkling clean and ready for action. But here's the thing about quality. It's not a one-time fix. It's a continuous process. You can't just clean your workshop once and expect it to stay that way forever. Think about owning a car. You don't just fill it with gas and oil when you first buy it and then assume it's good forever. That would be absurd. You perform regular maintenance. You check the oil level, you monitor the tire pressure, you listen for strange noises from the engine. You have a dashboard with gauges and warning lights that tell you if something is wrong before you break down on the side of the highway. Data quality monitoring is that dashboard for your data pipeline. It gives you real-time visibility into the health of your data, alerting you the moment something deviates from the norm so you can fix it before it causes a major breakdown. In a data pipeline, monitoring involves setting up automated checks that run constantly. We can set thresholds based on the profiles we built earlier. For example, we can set an alert to trigger if the number of null values in the email column ever exceeds 2%. We can create a rule that says if the daily volume of incoming data drops by more than 20%, someone needs to be notified. These checks can track all sorts of metrics: the freshness of the data, the distribution of values, the percentage of records that pass or fail validation. Ultimately, this proactive monitoring builds trust. When people in your organization, analysts, scientists, executives, use the data, they can be confident that it's reliable because they know it's being watched over. This trust is the foundation for making bold, data-driven decisions. It's the difference between navigating with a state-of-the-art GPS system versus a hand-drawn map from a dubious source. By investing in a robust, multi-step quality pipeline and continuously monitoring its performance, we're not just cleaning data. We are building a fortress of fact, a reliable foundation upon which great things can be built. And that, my friends, is a myth worth proving true every single day.